the internet. And today we have Ranjit. Ranjit, thanks so much for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right, so for those of you that don't know Ranjit, he is the CEO of Atomic Fusion. Those of you that know Neil probably know Neil Pierce, who was started Atomic Fusion. Ranjit bought it after I think 6 months, around about 6 months when he was working on the project. And Ranjit, you also run your own kind of consultancy slash agency called Blur Apps. Am I right about that?
Yes, that's taken a bit of a backseat right now, but yeah, I do some of that on the side.
So you're focusing mostly on Atomic Fusion right now?
I am. I am.
Got you. Okay. Now, and I checked your background out on like LinkedIn and stuff,
Yeah.
and you do have like you do seem like the perfect person to be doing this type of thing. You have the design background, you have the consulting background, and you're pretty passionate about bubble and the no code
Yeah.
space. So it's like it's when Neil said like when we chatted with Neil about this
Yeah.
about 6 months ago when he was in the kind of the he had just sold it, but he said like, yeah, you're in good hands, and there was a lot of questions. It's like, oh,
Oh, yeah,
well,
for
we
sure.
don't know who Ranjit is entirely yet. Neil has been
Yeah.
posting constantly about his he builds in public, but I've only seen improvements since you've taken it over. So what is that whole like taking over this project been like for you?
It's been pretty interesting. So I had attempted a bunch of ventures in the past, let's say. Never SaaS though. So it's been a pretty interesting experience going through the whole first of all going through the whole process of acquiring it, and then the whole process of not only like, so there's a bunch of users that are used to seeing Neil as the face of Atomic Fusion, and then suddenly you have this transition. So that was an interesting. I mean, I did expect that to be a little tricky, but
Hmm.
I think people were very sweet about it, to be completely, especially Neil. So
Yeah,
it's yeah.
and I think having Neil's like full support. Like I've taken over projects from Neil too. Like he's worked on like client projects, and then he's kind of. I think he actually moved off of them to start with Atomic Fusion, so that freed up some of his bandwidth.
Mm,
And he's always like super available for any
yeah,
questions that I've ever had. So I've never had an issue taking over one of his projects.
yeah. He's amazing, I have to say.
Michael, what's up, buddy? Thanks for joining.
Hey, Michael.
Anyone that's watching, throw your questions into the chat if you have a question for Ranjit. I think one of the big things that I was wondering when I was first starting to use Atomic Fusion, and again, I have to assume kind of take a step back here and just pretend like I try to think back to when I didn't know about Atomic Fusion and or what it was or what problem it was solving, because I think there's a lot of people that aren't taking advantage of it. Um, what do you think in your mind is like the right time to say, okay, like I can either start building this thing, this page or this component from scratch, or I can search a library like Atomic Fusion, like Frames, and you know um, use that to save myself some time.
So I think it really depends on what exactly you're getting done. Um, so like, yeah, so you mentioned Frames, and I think Frames is a great example of how you can really speed up building apps when you have a very good process set up, for example. So if you're a freelancer and you've got a process of getting wireframes, and you build things out and then you ship them, um, in that case something like Frames does make a lot of sense. um, and also Atomic Fusion, but Atomic Fusion makes more sense if you're building something that's not as well defined necessarily. So if you're open to kind of experimenting with the different kinds of assets that there are on Atomic Fusion, and the design is not as set in stone as it sometimes is. um, yeah, in those cases Atomic Fusion makes sense, although now there are UI kits, so it kind of serves both sides. But yeah, overall, Atomic Fusion is designed more for exploration in addition to just building.
Understood. Exploration, and definitely
Yeah,
that definitely shows through with like the creative stuff that's on there. I think it's very like these designs are very beautiful. You could tell that
yeah,
people are investing a lot of time into how they've set up the asset. It feels like an asset library, whereas
yeah,
frames or even the bubble component library to like the bubble component library that just came out. is to me like a skinny version of frames.
Yeah.
That Bubble, felt that they kind of wanted to put out, I think, just for user onboarding stuff, right? Like, so you don't
Yeah.
have that blank page. You may not know about frames, you may not know about Atomic Fusion, you may not know about Canvas, and you're just staring at a blank page. So I think that's why they did it. But yeah, I think you're right in that there's definitely different situations where you would want to like take a look at like Atomic Fusion. Okay, what about the other thing that I hear, like it's not, I don't have as much experience with like AirDev and
Mm.
Canvas, but I'm wondering how you conceptualize like where do all of these things like fall in different buckets? Are they like, and where does Atomic Fusion fit up? Like, are they templates? Are they components? Are they, like kind of, I guess, what to use when? How do you think about that? Because it's kind of confusing for me, who's even been
Yeah.
using Bubble for some time now.
It's it's actually one of the things I want to work on with Atomic Fusion is like just kind of making it a little more organized. So it is currently a mix of everything. It's a bunch of components and some templates, and some page shells, for example, like a lot of different stuff. And like if you search for stuff, you'll find it, and it's not too difficult to find things that you're looking for. But it'll be nice to kind of have be directed towards exactly what you're looking for in terms of, like, say you're looking for specifically templates, then you should get all the templates, that kind of thing. AirDev is mostly templates, I would say. In some ways, it's kind of similar to frames in some ways, and also Bubble Essential Kit. But I think the thing with them is that they are very well designed. So they've invested a lot of time and energy in not only designing them but also standardizing how they look and feel and work.
When you say them, you mean Canvas, right? AirDev?
Canvas, also Bubble Essential Kit, also frames.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So let's actually talk about, you mentioned the search, and I've been, like I said, I've been noticing a lot of, I've noticed changes since I last used Atomic Fusion. And I want to talk through some of these with you and just kind of see like, all right, what's new here? And, how should people, just kind of demystify what Atomic Fusion is for people that may have not have used it before.
Yeah.
So let me share this screen here. All right, so this is the interface. You can see my screen,
Yep.
Benji?
I can, yeah.
All right, cool. So this is the interface. For those of you that are curious about what Atomic Fusion looks like, you can see that on this, the kind of where you sign up here, the home screen, and this is all built on Bubble. Am I right? This whole interface. I know that the Chrome extension, obviously, there's a process involved with that. But for the most part, but this interface in particular is built on Bubble.
This is all Bubble, yeah.
Right, and you said you can search. You could search the assets here. It's broken down between block components. Which what how do you explain block components to someone that hasn't used this before?
So we're coming from a perspective of granularity. So block components you would have pages, which is like entire pages, obviously. And then you kind of break it down a little bit, and then you get block components. So multiple block components would make a page. So for example, if you wanted to make a landing page, you could, if you see some of these cards here, you can just like pick up some of them and just put them with each other on a page, and you have a landing page or whatever set up. Then you have elements, which are more atomic kind of micro interactions.
I'm gonna tab over to elements here.
Yeah, so these would be more like, these kinds of things. Avatars, stats, these little cards, buttons, those kinds of very granular micro interaction kind of things. And then we've recently added UI kits, which is basically entire kits that you'd need to build a page, or possibly even an entire app. So we're still adding some stuff on UI kits. We're expecting a lot of UI kits to come from some of the creators as well. But yeah, that's the latest section there.
So are UI kits, are these like, are these a combination of block components, pages, elements? How do you think about, I'm not sure what a UI kit is, how is that different from a page?
So a UI kit is a collection of block components in most cases. In some cases, it also could be, it could also have some buttons or some other micro interactions along with it, or even some page examples within it. But it's essentially a kit that you would need to build out an entire page or an app without having to look at other assets necessarily. So um, I can explain to you where this came from. So there was UI kits on the older version of Atomic Fusion, and then when we built out version 4, we kind of redid everything. So we were like, let's hold on to UI kits for a while. Let's see how people are using the other assets, and then based on that, let's reintroduce UI kits accordingly. So we noticed that a lot of people were using block components, and a lot of challenges they were having were that all of the most of the block components weren't designed to work with each other. So say I'm building out a page and I take one asset from creator A and another asset from creator B. They don't necessarily have similar styles or layouts.
Okay.
So they don't necessarily. So then I have to go in and do some layout and some touching up after. So to avoid that, we were like, okay, let's build out entire kits where everything is designed to be used together, and then all you have to do is create a wireframe, pull in these blocks, and then just add the copy or whatever.
Now, do you think of like a UI kit almost being like a fully function? When you say these micro interactions, are you're just talking about like workflows and actual functionality as opposed to just design templates, right?
That is in the works. That is in the works. So currently we have design templates. So there are assets that come with workflows. So you probably have seen the copy with workflow
Yep.
functionality. So yeah, you can copy workflows, but it's not entirely. Um, so not every single workflow gets uploaded to Atomic Fusion. It's just the workflows that are attached to the asset or to the element that you're uploading
Hmm.
into Atomic Fusion. So that's what it is right now. But we are obviously working on including more or less everything that you can do in Bubble. So not only workflows, but you'll have like everything else very soon.
I think a big difference from what I've seen in the Bubble template marketplace, right? That predated Atomic Fusion and
Yeah.
well probably Frames to some extent too, is the I guess the quality I want to say. It's really like when you start working from a marketplace template, it's very difficult to go in and figure out what that designer did. The elements sometimes have like,
Mm,
you got three group Bs, and there's
yeah.
just so much work to figuring out, okay, what do I have to do to change this to make it do what I want it to do, right? You're
Yeah.
usually when you start from a template, you want to customize it to build what you need. But with Atomic Fusion, I don't find that. I find that all of the elements are named in a way that are easy for the next developer to understand. The workflows are very simple, and with some knowledge of Bubble, you can probably figure out
Yeah.
what's going on there. And it makes me think like how how are you vetting I mean, Atomic Fusion puts out a ton of these themselves, so like obviously
Yeah.
like that's a ton of work for you, but you can't do you're only one person, you can't do that forever. So
Yeah.
how have you like thought about the different creators that are on the platform? And it's funny because most of these people I know, Rico I know,
Yeah.
Beck is a big contributor here,
Michael's
and
there.
Michael, yeah, like there's just
Yeah.
so
There's
many
a lot of.
people.
Yeah.
It's cool to see like the people that I know actually seeing like using their assets. You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
but how do you do that? Like, do you pay people to build on here, or are you just like is it more like a social thing where it's like, hey, I'm Rico and I created this cool template and like this is a
Yeah.
link back to my profile. How do you think about that?
So to me, it's more of a social thing. So when it comes to Atomic Fusion's assets, the ones that we upload, they're usually built by me or by some freelancers that we hire internally, right? Um, and then when we build those out, like I have these very specific requirements, and there's a checklist of the asset has to be like this. It has to have these kinds of names, etc., whatever. So we try to maintain that standard internally. But when it comes to creators and the things that they upload, it's usually a social thing. I mean, I wouldn't want to pay creators to upload it that way, because um, that I wouldn't want that to be the incentive for them to upload stuff. I would want them to upload stuff because A, it helps the community. B, they might be able to get some visibility and credibility by doing that. A lot of people have done that actually. Um, so Thomas and Michael and other people have kind of got gigs and had clients come to them after having looked at their Atomic Fusion profiles and stuff like that. So those are the kinds of reasons I would want creators to upload stuff. Obviously, the marketplace is coming soon, so that's another reason, obviously. But it's got to be more community oriented, if you ask me.
Understood. Yeah, and I love that. I think that's a much stronger incentive than anything
Yeah,
that you could possibly pay for something like this. I think
yeah,
at some, like, of course you want to be paid for your work, but at some level, especially in the creative space, like compensation kind of kills your creativity because you're like, I'm on the clock. You know what I mean? And that kind of like hinders how you think about what you're doing.
yeah.
Um,
Although I understand people wanting, like, or hoping to get paid, or having, or their work having some sort of financial incentive, because they put in a lot of work, right? It takes a lot of work to build out these assets.
Absolutely. So it's a very
So,
fine line. It's a
yes,
confusing one.
definitely.
I
Yes.
can't. It's got to be a tricky line to walk. But you can see that there's definitely a social component to this, right? So you got a followers and following, and then you can find creators. Let's check out Michael,
Yeah.
right?
I think he calls himself Mike, Mike,
Mike.
Mikeol. Yeah, that is
Michael, which
the
one are
next
you, buddy?
the next one. Yeah, the third from below.
Third from below. This one?
That's
Ah,
the
yeah,
one.
that makes sense. That's kind of his last name. All right, so I click on him, then I can go directly to his profile.
Yeah.
And then I've got all of the assets that Michael specifically has created, right? And I can
Yes.
fork these into my own. This is the one that I dropped in the tweet today. I thought this
Mhm.
was a nice little
Yeah.
component here for dashboards. And you can see that there's followers here following, and then there's a link back to their Twitter accounts as well. So it feels, it's as opposed to the marketplace where the template feel like it just feels like something you're buying is very transactional. It's like I can
Yeah.
literally buy this template or this component and then talk to the person that created it
Yeah.
pretty easily on Twitter, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone's, especially like when you're proud of something that you built and people are using it, like they're pretty willing to like have a chat with you and say, hey, how do I do this? Is there any way to
Yeah.
customize this? And yeah, again, I think it's just a great way to contribute and also get visibility into yourself if you're marketing yourself as a freelancer or
So
you know.
I've been trying to add some features. Let's call it features, to kind of get people to get leads for freelancing, stuff like that. So, like, there's a thing on the profile page that we were just looking at, where you can actually um, set it up to say that you're available for freelance work. So if you go to your settings and you set that up there, it'll appear here that you're available for
Nice.
freelance work. That's the kind, you can select a bunch of types of projects you're interested in doing. Obviously, that's still experimental, so we're just seeing how people use that. But that's something. And also you can comment on assets. So if you go to the asset page, any of these asset pages, you can actually, so if you click on that link there, in yeah, that the next icon on the right.
Oh, this one here?
Yeah, this one. So that's the asset page, and if you
Oh,
scroll down, you can actually comment there. And if you
got
comment
it.
there, they get an email, and then you can have that conversation. So
Gotcha.
yeah, so I've seen this happening on a lot of really popular assets, where people are like, okay, I'm really interested in this asset, but I try to copy it into my app, and then I couldn't figure so and so out. Can you help me? And then they kind of help each other out.
Very cool. What do you think is the first impression that people get when they do you hear any kind of consistent feedback from people that are just starting to work with Atomic Fusion or they're new to Bubble? Like is there anything consistent that people are saying?
Well, it depends on where they are in their bubble process. So, like, bubble beginners, Actually, not too many bubble beginners use atomic fusion, to be honest, but the ones that do, some of them have said that it's really interesting to copy assets into their app and then kind of figure out how they were built and
Hmm.
how that helps with their process of learning how bubble works. Especially people that are trying to figure out the new responsiveness engine. So like there's a lot of these little nuances that they're trying to understand how they work. And then they just copy something from atomic fusion and then they just break it down internally and then they'll be like, oh, that's how it's done. you know
Yeah,
um,
it's counterintuitive, right? Because the people that are new to Bubble wouldn't know necessarily
yeah.
just yet to go to Atomic Fusion, but that's probably their best bet in terms of figuring out a page structure, right? Like, and
Yeah.
let's go through this exercise of just dropping a component on into a Bubble app because I want people to
Yep.
see how easy it truly is, right? So obviously you need to install. I have a Bubble app open here. This is an Atomic Fusion
Hmm.
template right here, Atomify. I'm not sure who created that, but I'll shout them out if I can find it. But if I go to, let's start a new page, I guess, right? Would that be the
Yeah.
easiest way to do
Yeah,
this?
that makes sense. Yeah.
AF demo, something like that. And you can see that I already have the Atomic Fusion icon down here. That's because I've installed the Chrome extension. So you do need to install the Chrome extension in order to get this pop up. And then, okay, so that's Atomic Fusion that created that. So either you or Neil or one of your
It was Neo,
free,
I think.
yeah, one of the freelancers. Yeah,
Yeah.
this one. But okay, so let's do the cron landing page, right?
Yeah.
Or let's, you know what, even better than that, let's fork a new component, right? I'd say I don't have I don't have the one that I want here already forked. Forking, I'm going to explain this wrong, Ranjit, so correct me. But forking to me is just like when you've searched through Atomic Fusion's component library, you see something you've liked, and then you're kind of poking that with a fork, bringing it into your bubble editor here, so that you could just
Yeah.
use it whenever you want to.
Well, forking is it's more of a GitHub term. It's kind of like cloning. So you've got a library of your own. That's your extension, and you've got this global library of stuff that people share, and then you're just picking the stuff that you like, and you're just kind of cloning that into your library. That's what forking is.
Gotcha. So that comes from GitHub. You taught me something new. All right. So explore more assets. And then that'll take you back here. So say I want to fork the let's do a full page. Let's do this one. All right, so see in my forks. Wait, I think I clicked it twice.
No, I think you clicked it once and it went into your forks. So it
Oh, okay.
disappears from your explore and it goes into your forks.
Gotcha. So now you can see that that's already in my assets here, the Universal Dart Kit, and then I can copy this,
Yep.
right click,
And paste.
and then paste.
Is the parent group column?
The parent group is probably a fix
It
because
should
I
be a
didn't
column.
change that.
Yeah.
Should I have done that before I copied
No,
it
I
over?
don't think it should make a difference.
Okay. Now, again, if you're new in Bubble, you can then see like, okay, this is the page structure. You can then like start just double clicking on all of these elements and seeing like, all right, so the outermost element, which is contact section 1, this whole thing here, is a column format. You can see that there's gap spacing between the elements. That means like this spacing here, right? And all of these settings that are on here kind of will give you hints into what makes up this component or this, if it's a website or if it's a full page, then the page, right? So, and then you can see like, all right, how does this break down in the element tree? Like this is what I think, I called out the group A stuff before, but yeah, this is the part that I think Atomic Fusion does better is that you have the full names here for these elements and they're unique names.
Yeah.
I think again, this is exactly the part I was
The
talking
group
about.
A.
But yeah, but
Yeah.
the other ones that I've used, these have all
Yeah.
been unique.
Yeah.
And that to me is super helpful when trying to figure out like, all right, how do I build a workflow on this particular element? and needing to refer back to. It just makes building workflows easier if all of the elements are a unique
Yeah.
name. So that's literally how easy it is. Again, so for those that have not used or not, or if you're new to Bubble, I think it's great because again, you can figure out what a professional page looks like and just kind of work backwards from this end result. And for those that have been using Bubble for a long time, it just saves you time, right? You don't need to
Yeah.
build a custom login screen for every app that you build. It's pretty standard, right? They do the same things. Why not start with something pretty that someone else has built? And then of course you can change colors and fonts and all of that. It's it's customizable to it's 100% customizable, but at least you're starting, you're saving yourself 2 or 3 development hours by starting from this point and then, customizing.
And there's also the ability to create your own collections, like your private collections, and store assets in there, so you can reuse what you've built in the past, right from your Atomic Fusion extension. So I think that's something that we released a few weeks back, but it's been pretty popular. I think it's been especially popular among like freelancers.
Can you show me that component? Because I don't think I've used that before.
So basically, if you go to My Creations,
My creations.
yeah. So this is all the stuff that you've uploaded. I don't think you've uploaded anything yet, but so anything that you upload into Atomic Fusion will appear here, right? And then when you upload something, you have the option to either set it as private or public.
Oh, and when you say upload something, you mean like an image, or what kind of assets would I upload?
So any asset would be like any Bubble component. So if you've built out a page even, or a reusable element, or even a button, or any kind of element on Bubble, any component, you can upload that onto Atomic Fusion. And now it's pretty easy. So you can just right click and you have the upload button right there. So you can upload that into Atomic Fusion, and then when you upload that, it will give you the option to save it either as a public asset or a private asset. So what creators do, the ones that share it with the community, is that they set that as public. So whatever they upload is visible to everyone, and that's why you can see it and fork it, right? But in case you want to have something that's only visible to you, you can just mark it as private, and then it's only visible to you, and then you can do a private share to a teammate. So you can kind of collaborate on stuff that's private but built in Bubble.
Yeah, and I imagine freelancers and agencies will save a lot of time doing it that way. They can, share with your internal team the asset. Look, this is how we use this. This is the repeating group style that we want for our clients. Start with this. How much time is that going to save as opposed to having to build that every single time? It's just it's a great library. It's just like you're building your own little asset library.
I've seen people building their own. So especially the ones that have these very niche use cases that they work with, they kind of build out their own assets with some of them with workflows even, and they just store them in these private collections on their Atomic Fusion extension. And then whenever they just want to use that, they pick it up and paste it in. So it becomes quite easy for them.
Nice. Yeah, there really isn't any. I want to say like who is the like the target for this, but it's really just anyone who's building on Bubble. It doesn't matter how experienced you are or what you're doing with it. This is going to save you time regardless.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
One of the things that I chatted with Neil about that I think was the back 6 months ago when him and I chatted. Again, Neil was the creator of Atomic Fusion, and then Ranjit took over. And the code locker or code repository, is that still available?
That is not yet available, but we are getting it back very soon.
Okay, so the code, for those of you that don't know, the code repository was a place, it was a library. It's very similar to the assets that are in there now, but it had custom code, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that you could use, kind of borrow, like, hey, I want to get rid of the scroll bars on all of my screen. Yeah. You copy and paste this into an HTML element in Bubble, and boom, there it is. And that was one of the things that I was like most excited about, because having to, not having to search Stack Overflow for code that you need. Like I know that specifically this is code for Bubble. That to me is just like such a time-saving thing, and it's just like super convenient.
There are some little things that you have to do to make code work in Bubble sometimes. So like when
Yeah.
you add CSS, you have to add the important property after every CSS property that you add. Otherwise, some stuff doesn't work on Bubble. It gets overridden by something else. So yeah, that was really helpful. I agree. I remember that being really helpful. So we've been kind of we've spent the last few months kind of understanding how and why people use Atomic Fusion. That's been mostly why it's free. It's like I didn't so I took over in June, so July, August, and then a couple of months I was like trying to understand, kind of get into the groove, figure out how things work, all of that. And then there was a point where I realized that I really don't know why people use Atomic Fusion, like really, like
Mhm.
what exact problem are they trying to solve, and what matters to them more than others, and that kind of thing. So we redesigned Atomic Fusion V4, if you remember. And with V4, what we did was we added some. Uh, so we structured it in a way that it's very modular in terms of how it works, the kinds of assets that you have, and all the various features, etc. So it's very easy for me to understand what's being used more than other things. So if I notice that people are using assets with workflows way more than assets without workflows, that tells me something.
Mhm.
And now I can differentiate between that. So yeah, so that's the process, that's why I've been kind of I built V4, and then I've been kind of incrementally adding some features in ways that I was like I could take an informed decision on how to introduce them back in, based on the patterns that I saw. So that's why
Understood.
it's
I want to
taking a
I
little
want to
time.
I want to come back to that because I think there's a
Yeah.
lot of like how you're collecting user feedback. I think is
Yes.
it's not obvious how to get that done. We always talk about like, oh, collect user feedback, but like
Yeah.
how? What are some actual ways? But I want to get to Michael's question here. He's
Uh-huh.
asks, I have a question for Ranjit. Is it possible to save multiple pages with workflows into one UI kit so it can serve as a template?
Yeah, absolutely. So each page will be okay. So one quick, so I'll get back to this, but one quick thing. So I had a call with Michael, I think it was yesterday, and he was having trouble uploading a reusable element. Um, and so the thing here is that Bubble treats pages and reusable elements as their own thing, sort of. So it's not the same as uploading a group or even copy pasting a group. So when you copy a page and you paste it somewhere else, not with workflows, it still takes the workflows with it. Same with reusable elements. However, if you copy a group and paste it somewhere else, it won't take the workflows with it. You have to do a copy with workflows and paste with workflows. So that's a little. I'll probably make a video on that because that's a little caveat that people need to know while using Atomic Fusion. But coming back to this, so yeah, so you can create a UI kit. You can have block components, you can have elements, and you can have pages, multiple of each in each UI kit. It would be a good idea to have a bunch of pages as kind of as templates of how your UI kit can be used. I would definitely suggest that. In fact, I wish I had added some pages like that on the UI kits that I uploaded as well. So yeah, definitely, Michael, that's a good idea.
Very cool. Coming back a little bit to the user feedback and how you're managing that, I think it's like there's so much noise, and I always say, I always tell people like work with your users and build in public and just make sure that you're building with an audience and not in a silo. But it's also very noisy at the same time. Like, how do you know which feedback to be actionable on, and how do you even go about like sorting through the stuff that people are telling you? Because everyone's got an opinion based on their
That's
narrow
true.
use case.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So it's a combination of talking to people for sure. Like there's no alternative to that, and also getting data from analytics, stuff like that. So analytics has really helped in terms of understanding what. So people often say things and behave differently when they're using the app in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Well, unintentionally, obviously, but it's tricky when you're trying to understand exactly what problems they're trying to get solved by using the app. So especially when I'm trying to add a new feature, I talk to a bunch of people, and there'll be a lot of feedback, but then there'll be a lot of patterns that come through, and so following the patterns and following how those patterns translate into existing analytics data.
Why do you think that is? Because I've done this myself, where I say something, but then I realize, oh, I didn't really mean that. I think it might just be because, like, when you're in a situation like this where someone is asking for feedback, you need to say something, right? You don't want to just sit there silently, but then you're like, well, that was not really my real answer. Like, if I would have had a little more time to think about that, I probably would have said this, and this, or, like, added some nuance to my response there. So, like, why do you think? Why do you think that is?
It's probably because it's different, because you process situations differently when you're in them versus when you're talking about them. I think it's a very different frame of like a very different perspective you take on situations. So yeah, but I mean, when you talk to people, it's you get a third person's perspective on the question that you're asking them, but the question is about them being in that situation, right? So it's very interesting. I haven't yet been able to kind of make direct correlations between what people say when they talk to you about something and what they actually do, but it'll be really cool.
Wow. I'm gonna steal that, Ranjit, because that is some genius
course.
right there. Like, wait, so when you ask somebody how you're getting a third party perspective when you ask somebody their opinion on something, because they have to think back to the situation where they were actually doing it. Ooh, I like that. Ooh, I like that very much. That is a great perspective to have. Yeah, people don't know even their own, like, truth or behavior sometimes, right? It's not that they're lying; they just don't know.
Yeah, it's subconscious, I think.
I love that. All right, cool. So we touched on the creators, we touched on the assets, getting them into Atomic Fusion. A little bit more, I think, on the. Oh, actually, there's two more kind of technical things that I wanted to just talk about. There is a plugin for Atomic Data, right? So I think anyone that's used Bubble knows that, like, if you're just trying to demo something, you just want some sample data in there, and having to go and upload that manually, a picture, the name, the email, that's time consuming, right? You can waste an hour just uploading 10 records if there's enough columns. So what do you think are some of the best use cases, I think, for that plugin in terms of, like, just getting, sample data into the app? Is it demo purposes? Is it like, when do people use the Atomic Data plugin?
Demo purposes for sure. So a problem that you'd face without something like that would be that say you have a repeating group in an asset, and someone kind of forks it and copies it into their app. They don't have the same data that you have, right? So their version of that asset breaks in the sense that it has a bunch of issues, and it says that this data type was not found and that was not found, that kind of thing. So Atomic Data is a way to kind of standardize that. So if you have a demo app, and if you want to share it with someone, or if you have an asset and you want to share it with the people in the community, and you do it via Atomic Fusion, if you have the data set up with the Atomic Fusion, the Atomic Data plugin, you can just share it with them, and then they can just set it up the same way. And if they have the plugin as well, it becomes like a dependency. It's like it's like my Python code requires this library to work. It's kind of something like that. At the end of the day, you actually use it.
Yeah. Understood. I think best for, like, repeating group data, if you're trying to lay out a repeating group intelligence, have that data, and it works like an API, right? It's I mean, you don't have to know an endpoint to do it, but it calls to an external database.
Yes.
Got you. Okay. Very cool. All right. So I guess I think there's a few more, again, if there's questions. Michael, did that answer your question before? If not, let us know. But just kind of thinking through the next, we touched on a few possible next features, and what seems to be popular and resonating with the people that are using Atomic Fusion. But what are you seeing as, like, the next maybe top 3 features that you want to build?
So one thing for sure is enabling styles again. Styles, code snippets. I wouldn't call code snippets a feature per se. It's a minor update. It's like a patch, but yeah. So I'd say, yeah, so snippets, styles, data types, option sets, API setups. So you should be able to copy and paste API stuff. And also, well, the marketplace, obviously. Well, so the marketplace is, that's going to be an interesting one. It's kind of tricky on just like the implementation of it. It's going to take a lot of initial work with creators. So I am working on creating a cohort of initial sellers. So that would be like maybe 10 or 12 initial sellers, and then we kind of run a beta version of the marketplace and see, how we can incrementally improve the way we're going about it, and then make it like a full-on open marketplace. So yeah,
What
so
is
those are,
what does the marketplace look like? The first version of that look like? Is it like I say I'm a content creator and I put the template up and people can pay for that? Very similar to how the Bubble marketplace
yeah,
works today, or
similar to that, quite similar to that. We haven't, I don't have a definitive answer on exactly how, whether you'll get paid as a commission of each purchase, or how that's going to work exactly, but yeah, more or less in something like that.
got you. Okay, yeah, I imagine that the business model still needs to be tested and
that's
proved
that,
out. Yeah,
that
that's
depends on a couple of other things, which are in the works.
sure. But in the small right now, I think to just differentiate what's there right now. Right now, it's somebody pays like your end user to Atomic Fusion would pay for a monthly subscription,
Yeah,
and then they have access to the premium features, depending
the
on
full, yeah,
which tier they're on. But in the future, it's more of a direct sale, or like you said, a possible commission payment to the creator once
yeah,
they've, which changes the dynamic of the platform, I think, quite a bit. Where it's definitely, I don't know if the marketplace is one component or Atomic Fusion turns into a marketplace, but it definitely feels more like I think there's a kind of a difference between the social component of it and and a marketplace
there is,
component to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And all, like, some of these answers can only be answered, some of these questions can only be answered by actually starting to kind of dip into it, and then just see how things work out, by doing like a beta of it, and then you're like, okay, this is how things panned out, and then we go from there.
Yeah, yeah, trial by fire.
Yeah,
The plans, every time I make a plan, it never seems to work out the way I'd expected,
yeah,
especially with
yeah,
with this dev stuff and getting people's attention and what people find important. It just always seems like you're shooting from the hip, and then you have to just figure out where you were completely wrong and
yeah.
rebuild. All right, man. Those are all of the questions that I had for you. Again, thanks for doing this. I'm looking forward to seeing what the next few versions of Atomic Fusion
Yeah.
look like. I'm following you obviously, and championing the. This is always my go-to kind of like if when someone asks me like how do you build, can Bubble build pretty designs? Well, yeah,
Yeah.
look at this. This is it's great to be able to just point to one place where all the pretty designs are. Like, yeah, look what these people do. Look what they do. Just because
Nice.
I'm a crappy designer doesn't mean that Bubble is a bad design platform,
Yeah,
right? So like, I love that.
that's awesome.
I love being able to point to you to your platform for that.
Thanks. That's awesome.
All right, Ranjit. I will catch you later, man. Pleasure to meet you. Thanks for doing this.
This was amazing. Thanks a lot for having me.
My pleasure. I'll catch you all tomorrow on the Rad Stream. We're going to be taking a look at Sparklite. No, actually, is that tomorrow? No, I have something else tomorrow. I'm not sure what I have tomorrow, but Thursday we're going to be checking out Sparklite with turning API or turning spreadsheets into API endpoints. So come check us back. All right. Catch you later,
John.
everybody.
See ya.